So, as anticipated in class, the last module of the course is like aim to provide you an overview of some supply chain model by putting together everything that we have seen until now. It's just like some quick overview of try to make sense of what we have seen until now as silos, because until now we have discussed the main supply chain decision that brings to the structure of the supply chain like individually. We have first seen some plan, we have then seen some principle about production system design, that we have seen some principle about supply network design, and then we have touched some aspect related to distribution network design, but we have started the first class by discussing that supply chain are supply chain because they are network as a whole. So the last two classes of the course are focused on presenting you some model that instead characterize the supply chain network as a whole, putting together the different aspects and characterizing in a different way the different aspects that you have seen in the course. In particular, there is a very popular model in supply chain, which is called the Hau Lee matrix. The Hau Lee matrix is a model that put together some dimension to analyze and characterize the supply chain and realize some archetypes. This is the Hau Lee model. So basically, the Hau Lee model has two dimensions that we are going to analyze. One is what is called the product or the demand variability, which characterizes the level of variability of the process, the supply chain process outbound. And as we discussed about what planning is, variability means how much let's say the demand of the final market and so the distribution system in the supply chain can be considered stable or characterized by more or less stability. And of course, Hau Lee distinguish between the context in which there is low stability and high stability. On the other X, instead, the Hau Lee matrix put what is called the process instability, which instead is, it means how much the inbound process, and with inbound process we refer to supply network and production, in particular technology characterizing the production system, can be considered stable or unstable, which means subjected or not to change, dividing also in this case between low and high. So basically the idea is that in context where the demand variability is low and the process instability is low, we have a supply chain model. In context where the process instability is low but the demand variability is high, we have another supply chain model that this matrix suggests. In the context where the process instability is high and the demand variability is low, there is a third model. And finally, in context where we have both high variability in demand and high instability in the process, there is a fourth model. But now let's first deep dive into the meaning of the two dimensions, also like they are depicted here. So first of all, when we talk about just a quick recall about what I just told you, like demand variability affect the outbound part of the supply chain. So demand variability means how much the demand is variable, so unstable, so not predictable. The more, of course, the distribution system is as well variable and unpredictable. Well, instead, when we discuss about the process instability refers mainly to the production process, so the instability of the technology and the organization of production, and the structure and design of the supply network. So recall all the decision about the supply network, the make or buy, the sourcing strategy, the relationship configuration, so everything that is related to the supply network, how often need to be changed to cope with the instability of the context. Now, let's start with analyzing the concept of demand variability. In particular, the Hau Lee model distinguished the demand variability and in high and low according to the type of product that the supply chain brings into the market. In particular, the supply chain in the Hau Lee model, for the Hau Lee model, can bring to the market two different type of product, two type of archetype of product. One is called functional product, which is basically mass distribution products. So they are all the retail goods that you can imagine. They are characterized by stable demand, so demand which is like quite flat and quite stable during time. Long life cycle, so they are present on the market since a long time, and usually like turbulence in this market is induced by exogenous factor, like when there are sales, when there are promotion, when there are launch of new variants expected by the customer. These are the type of product that can be defined as functional. Instead, for what concern the innovative product, instead are those products which are characterized by short life cycles, so basic, very few months, which means that they are included in the market and excluded from the market very often. They have a variable demand and usually high margin, frequent product change, and there is the importance of time to market. So it's important to go to the market when you launch these products which are innovative as fast as possible. These are examples of innovative and functional product. So these are functional product. So Coke, razor, rice, soap, Kleenex, silverware, like look at these characteristics, or like paper or whatever. So everything that is mass distribution, they have long life cycle, and like the demand is quite like stable and predictable. Compare instead to like, this is an example of a clothing, like a cloth, so t-shirt, polos, or advanced, or like luxury clothes, or phone, electrics, video games, perfume. So everything that is more subjected to innovation and customization and market request. All of this is innovative. So basically, the supply chain can bring to the market these two types of product, and from an Hau Lee model perspective, these functional products are characterized by a low like outbound process variability, so the distribution channel and distribution system for Coca-Cola, razor, rice, soap, and Kleenex have been quite stable during time, so they are not subjected to variation, while instead the distribution system and the outbound processes of company bringing to the market products like that are subjected to high reconfiguration. The Hau Lee model also proposes some variables through which characterizing and distinguish between functional and innovative product. In particular, to the extreme, these are the two characteristics. Now, I don't want to focus too much here, but functional product, beside the definition that I just gave you, are the one that when you talk about demand management, they are characterized by simple forecast model, or instead innovative products are characterized by complex forecast model. When we talk about the product life cycle, as I told you, functional product have long product life cycle, which means higher than 2 years. Here instead we are talking like on average 2 or 3 months. When we talk about the contribution margin of this product, usually functional product, again, think about what you saw before, like the contribution margin is usually low, so the profit make on cost is usually 5 or 20%. Instead, for innovative product, is very high, it can be like 20 or 60% or even more. When we talk about variety, the variety, and recall in terms of production, the type of family of product is usually low, when low here is 10, 20 variants per category. Instead, when we talk about innovative product, we have a high variety, millions of variants per category. Think about all the possible cloth, t-shirt, tissue, and material, and color, and button, and whatever. Then, when we talk about demand management, so when we talk about the average forecast error, mean absolute percentage error, for example, in the case of functional product, is usually very low because there is simple model, so about 10% is just the benchmark. For innovative product, it can be very high, up to 100%. When we talk about how much these products are likely to be in stock out, well, For functional product, very predictable demand, long consolidated presence in the market, low average forecast error, the average stockout rate is low, 1-2%, while instead for innovative product is usually higher, up to 40%. The end of season markdown, which means how much the company are forced to sell the product below price at the end of the season, because otherwise they become obsolete. Like for functional product, this is not the case. When instead for innovative product, think about again an iPhone or a video game, like when a console for video games, like when it's up to launch a new model, of course there is the need to like sell the previous one, because otherwise this become obsolete. So there is an high risk of obsolescence, which is also included then in the cost of stock. Remember that we talk about that, which can be up to 10-25%. Finally, lead time for make-to-order product, usually very long for functional product, which are usually making make-to-stock. Why? Because the demand is predictable. We have low probability of stockout rate, so it makes sense to configure make-to-stock supply chain. So to make a new one from scratch, like it's very long, from 6 months to 1 year. Again, this is just a benchmark, but it's very long. For innovative product, where instead they are very subjected to market variation and market demand changes, of course, there's need to like react very quickly to market changes, so they are usually assembly to order or make to order supply chain, and so the delivery time is very limited, which can be 1 day or 2 weeks according to the different type of product that we are considering. So that's for what concern the demand variability outbound. Functional product, low variability, and how to identify if we are talking about a functional product. You look at the parameters that we have just discussed, or more like you go to common sense, or high variability innovative product. Then, inbound, we need to look at the stability of the processes, which means, as I told you, the level of stability in the production activities, so how much once we design the production system, job shop, assembly shop, delivery time, cycle time, so all the parameters that we design. Imagine when we design the flow of the production process, how much this flow is supposed to like stay like that for a long time. If like this is a long time, it means that we are talking about stable processes. And on the other, like how much the supply network that I have today is likely to be the same tomorrow and in a long time. Whenever, again, this is supposed to be in the long time, we are talking about the concept of stable processes. Construction, clothing, paper, metals, furniture, electronics are all supply chain where production systems are the same, have been the same since long time, and supply network are quite consolidating. I already made this example. Think about like Gucci in Italy. Gucci in Italy, like the production of bags, like besides some modernization of plant, like is the same since the 80s and the 70s. Okay, so the production process is the same. There have been some minor improvement, but the process is the same. The supplier have been the same, like Gucci works with the same supplier since like long time. Okay, same for Apple. Like Apple has its consolidated supply network that works with Apple in order to provide the components. Then the component changes, but then the production process, which is then like an assembly process for Apple, like the product change, but the way to assemble, like it's similar. It is not a huge variation. So we're talking about stable process. On the contrary, whenever we have context where production process and activity organization are continuous in evolution, there is a narrow and unstable supply chain, which means that we change very frequently our sourcing strategy. So first was multiple sourcing, then is single sourcing, then I have something that I was buying before, then I'm making it, then I'm buying again, and whatever. So whenever we change a lot this type of decision and we reshape, we we change the characteristic of the supply system, we are talking about unstable processes. Contexts like the food, the automotive, the semiconductors, the chemical, pharma, are all contexts that where innovation in the production process are very like often to occur, and like the nature of the supply network is supposed to change because it follows these changes, this innovation included in the production process. So if this is clear, the Hau Lee model like classified this type of supply chain, which are going to be analyzed with example in a few. Lean supply chain, responsive supply chain, rescheduling supply chain, and agile supply chain. Basically, you need to say that in context when the process instability is low and the demand variability is low, the model that supply chain should use is called lean supply chain. In context where demand variability is high and the process instability is low, like in the way that we define, so innovative product with very stable process of production and supply network, we have what is called responsive supply chain. When we have high process instability, so very like frequent changes in production and in the supply network, we have but low like demand, which is very manageable because the product is a functional one, is low. We have a rescheduling supply chain in context characterized by both high variability in the demand, so innovative product, and high process instability. We have what we call agile supply chain. Now, we're going to analyze each of these models, like try to understand its characteristic and how the supply chain looks when they follow this type of model. So the first model is the so-called lean supply chain. As you see here, and as you see from the Hau Lee matrix, the lean supply chain is a supply chain model or a supply chain strategy which is suitable when the customer demand is predictable and the production processes are consolidated and the supply network is stable over time. Remember, functional product and low process instability. The lean strategy has the main objective to maximize efficiency in terms of total supply chain cost, because the point is that if your demand is manageable, your outbound processes are predictable and are stable over time, all your supply chain processes are stable and predictable over time, you can work with the process which are configured as the same in a very long time to achieve the lowest cost as possible. That's why you see processes are consolidated, so there is the possibility to review the flow and eliminate non-value adding activities. So you can analyze processes that are consolidated and repetitive during time and improve their flow. Products and processes, in particular technology, are similar during time, so you can achieve economies of scale because volume accumulate on same resources, so you can gain efficiency advantage. Demand is stable and predictable, so it means that you can control stock and centralize demand and optimize the management of the product flow on the chain. Anticipated planning is possible. Again, you can work in make to stock, assembly to stock, so in supply chain that works on forecast, because forecast is actually reliable. And the supply network is stable, which means that there is the possibility to establish long-term relationship and improvement mechanism with suppliers. So it means that we need to work with we can work with supplier in establishing long-term relationship. One model that is typical of the lean supply chain strategy that follow lean supply chain principle is the so-called cloners. Like that's a type of supply chain network design. There are many. The cloners is one of these. Basically, it is usually implemented by big company in the cement, beverage, and metalworking industries that can count on big volume and operates in different countries. So basically what they do is to split their operation, which can count on huge volume, at local level, in order to optimize this operation locally and achieve the best cost. So basically they replicate source, make, deliver, source, make, deliver, and source, make, deliver in each country in which they operate, and they don't lose in efficiency because they have enough volume to sustain and to have economies of scale at regional level. And within each region, they work in optimizing in a stable supply base, a consolidated production process, and a structure, deliver, and distribution system. Why they can do that? Because again, I make the investment of replicating operation in multi-country, but as my demand is stable and my processes are not variable, I mean, this investment, this configuration is supposed to last for a long time. An example is Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola, I mean, I think that like no one of you knows Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola operates exactly like that. Coca-Cola has a supply chain which is specific in each country. They operate in a lean supply chain. They replicate the same configuration of the supply chain without changing like anything. The same configuration in terms of type of channel, type of production system, and structure of the supply network in each country Coca-Cola operates in. Coca-Cola operates on a huge volume in each country, so there is no problem in terms of economies of scale, and they are able to work in each country in optimizing, so minimizing the cost of sourcing, making, and delivering. Why? Because again, they work on a lean strategy, which means that their products are stable and the products are consolidated, because again, the channel and the deliver and the distribution system through which Coca-Cola delivered the product to the final customer are the same since a long time. The production process of Coca-Cola and then also the packaging can vary in terms of material, but in terms of technology is the same, is consolidated since the 90s, and the supplier of this type of beverage are consolidated in each country again since long time. So Coca-Cola has the opportunity to replicate in each country the same structure of the supply chain and works in optimizing source, make, and deliver in each country in order to obtain the lowest cost. Lean supply chain. Given the high stability of the context, I can just be focused on minimizing my cost with no worry about possible stock out, low level of service, innovation, or whatever, because this is something that is focal company driven and not market driven. A second model is so-called the risk hedging supply chain. If you remember from the Maxi, the risk hedging supply chain is suitable when, in light of a manageable customer demand, so outbound, the demand is variable, so the product is functional. So besides the product is functional, the production processes are in continuous evolution, so in terms of organization and technology, and also the supply network is unstable. So basically, a risk hedging supply chain are those supply chains that are exposed to risks inbound. Which are the risks? The risks are the fact that production processes are in evolution, so the production system need to be reconfigured, and so in light of this reconfiguration, the supply network need to be changed as well. In this case, the objective of risk hedging supply chain is no more like the minimization of the total cost as it happened in lean supply chain. In this case, the objective is the maximization of the so-called supply chain resilience. The supply chain resilience is the ability of the supply chain to react to the rising of possible source of risk in production and or in the supply network. Again, don't think about risk as a negative aspect. When I talk about risk, I mean that something that is supposed to change. This is a risk, because today this is something that you know, tomorrow is something that you don't know. That's the concept of risk in the supply chain. It can be positive or negative. But it means that a risk hedging supply chain is a supply chain that is configured in a way that, let's say, the processes, in particular the production and the supply the supply network, are configured in a way that they are able to cope with possible variation that can affect this part of the supply chain. Which means that, again, production, process, and organization and technology can evolve, and so there is always the need to introduce new competencies, new investment in research and development, additional capacity. When we talk about safety stock, like that's the case. Like safety stock are a way to reduce the possible variability that may arise risk hedging supply chain, adaptable capacity planning procedure, variable inventory management model. So everything that is related to making my production processes flexible to variation of technology or production system organization. So flexibility in production. For what concerns the supply network being unstable, so what you have is they need to have like backup strategy. So dual sourcing, parallel sourcing, design of an open supply base. So keep my supply base open to more supplier than the one that, for example, a lean supply chain may have. The supply chain should have the ability, the foreign company should have the ability to frequently change suppliers with low switching cost, as well as ability to realize vertical integration in case conditional changes. So this means having flexibility in the supply network. I need to configure my production and my supply network management in a way that, in case a possible source of risk arise, because we are in a context characterized by high process instability, my supply chain is able to react to this source of risk very flexible and very easily. Which type of source of risk we are talking about? Increased cost. Here you have some examples. So, example, Hau Lee, one supermarket chain, had to close several stores for safety reasons, and it had additional costs for 3.8 million in labor costs to clean up affected stores. To cope with this kind of increased cost, they need to reach an agreement with supplier to decrease also selling cost of the supplier. So only if you have a flexible supply network able to look also for low-cost supplier, you can cope with this type of risk factor. Reduce sale, like in 2000, Ericsson lost $4 million after their main supplier plant in New Mexico caught fire. So there was a problem in the supply base of Ericsson and Nokia, which were sharing the same supplier. So the supplier main site was there was a fire in the supplier plant, and while Nokia have a backup strategy, so they have a second supplier able to cope with the disruption of the first one, Ericsson was not able to do that because he was not operating on a backup strategy and on a risk hedging configuration, and he was unable to sell a cell phone because this was a supplier of a critical component, while instead Nokia was. So the risk hedging configuration gives Nokia the possibility to keep selling the product while Ericsson experienced a very huge loss of sales or loss of market share. So Sony has to postpone the launch of the Nex 7 and Reflex Alpha 65 cameras after the flood in 2011, which damaged 3 main facilities. So Sony experienced a flood in their facilities, and these were the only three facilities able to realize the new Nex 7 with this type of cameras that were not available. So not having other backup facilities able to produce Nex with safety stock of Reflex Alpha, Sony need to postpone the launch of this product with, of course, all the connected problems. Or like health and safety, product for recall, like we have a lot of examples like Toyota or Dell that recalled 22,000 laptop batteries that previously have been involved with overheating and explosion in consumer devices. So this is a source of risk. Like if I don't have a production system and a supply network able to immediately cope with this type of problem, of course, whenever a recall arises, it takes a long time to substitute and realize again this product or introduce the new forms of component in order to overcome very quickly this problem that has been perceived by the final market. Again, all of these sources of risk affect or the production process configuration or the supply base configuration. Again, there's another example here of Nestle KitKat when it was attacked by Greenpeace because there was there was palm oil used in components, so there was the need of eliminating the palm oil, so finding new supplier and changing the production process. And again, Nestlé need to do it very quickly, and thanks for a flexible and readaptable production process and supply base, that was possible. Otherwise, it would have been like experience very bad problem from a supply chain point of view. So risk hedging supply chain. A supply chain in inbound as a structure, production process, and supply process flexible to possible source of variability and risk that may arise. An example of that is what is called the focus factory structure. So basically, it is typical of industry like automotive, big pharma, electronics, where, given the fact that, again, risk hedging supply chain have customer demand and outbound stable, the delivery activities are managed like in a central way. So they bundle the request, so they usually use like central warehouse or very few local warehouses, because again, there is not the need to like customize a lot the satisfaction of the final customer demand. However, given the fact that there is high risk of variability in inbound process, they replicate source and make at the local level in order, not as in case of the Coca-Cola example, in order to just replicate the best practice and leveraging on big volume. No, like to back up what can happen in each country with the other factories. So, like for example, if a problem arises here, the fact of having other two facilities may give me the possibility to put the volume that is not satisfied here and here. Or if something arises in this supply base, I can use supplier here to supply this plant. So basically, the focus factory specialized and duplicate manufacturing site and supply base in order to back up each correspondingly to cope to possible problems that may arise. So they have a lot of complexity and centralization inbound and backup resources. So this is like also when you look at that, like you see that here you can look for efficiency. You bundle the outbound channel and the distribution system to satisfy and optimize the requests coming from the customer. When instead you find effectiveness or at least backup and flexibility inbound, like replication of the supply base and multi-factory production in order to like back up or like at least divide and distinguish and allocate production in different plants in order to distribute and separate the possible source of risk. BMW is a perfect example of that. So BMW has a specialized plant for model, for family of models. So each plant made, which are mainly in Germany and in the United States, they realize so specialized family of products. Like for example, in this case, SUV are made in the USA. Instead, like for example, the sports car are made in Germany. Okay, so there are focus factories specialized in the production of specific type of car, and each plant has its specific supply base, which gives the opportunity the fact that if something arises here, or if a plant is subjected to change or to maintenance or to break up or to strike of the operator, like they realize different models, but it's still like car. So the other plant can easily back up shortage in other plant, and the source is made in a parallel sourcing logic. But again, as we discussed with parallel sourcing, of course, suppliers are dedicated for family of product, but they can easily switch like to one family to another, like in case of need. Instead, for what concerns delivery, like delivery is like consolidated in a complex distribution system, but which is optimized and can deliver like in a very optimized way worldwide. Another representation of the supply chain is this one. You see that these are the factories, one in North America, one in the rest of Europe, one in Germany, one in Asia, one in other market. You see that each plant, look at the arrows. So BMW has one factory here, 8 here, 8 here, 5 and 2. Okay, so you see that they back up the plant also, like not only per country but also in each country, and then each plant or group of plant has its dedicated supply base. So from these you can see like there is a lot like flexibility. Okay, so there's a lot of flexibility because you have dedicated resources which can also like back up within each other. Okay. But then when it comes to outbound, like all the plant can be connected to the distribution system present in each country for a complex distribution outbound, which can, as they seen all the demand and all the product present in the plan, can also optimize and reach efficiency, being able to counter more volume in the distribution of car in the different worldwide country. The responsive supply chain instead is something opposite. So it's something that it doesn't have to face the variability inbound. So supply chain processes are stable in the supply and in the production part. But they need to face variability outbound, so in the demand. So they need to deal with innovative product. It means that they need to be responsive, so they need to react very quickly to customer change and customer request. In particular, which means that you need to assure production responsiveness, so design a production process that, despite stable in technology and stable in organization, need to be able to manufacture on order, flexible to different requests, because that's what the supply chain delivering innovative product need to face. And also deliver responsiveness, so design a distribution system able to deliver specific product to local markets in the desired lead time. So a delivery system which is specialized, which is tailored, which can be backed up according to the different market requests that can arrive and can change during time. An example of a responsive supply chain model is what we call the shopper structure. So it is exactly the mirror structure of the focus factory archetypes that we have seen for BMW, where basically the company has a worldwide sourcing, so they have a consolidation of sourcing. So the supply base is unique and usually is like worldwide. It's global sourcing, it's global supply base, global supplier, which serves multiple factory, which can be specialized, but in any way they are flexible to follow different type of demand. Each factory then deliver to the final customer through a dedicated distribution system, which assure the fact that each, for example, local warehouse or each transit point or each last node is able to configure the delivery of the product exactly according to the need of the customer. So shopping around the world, global sourcing, downstream operation at the local theater. So being able to tailor the delivery according to the customer requests, which are variable during time because we are talking about innovative product. Example, Barilla. Barilla is the exact example of this responsive supply chain, because again, even if it's like is not so evident, like this type of product, more than pasta, are subjected to frequent innovation. Think about cookies, think about biscuits, like they are subjected to innovation in flavor, in shape, vegan, non-vegan, gluten-free, low-calorie, high-calorie. So these are all innovation that requires this type of company to shape a production process which is tailored on the market request, but also a delivery channel and distribution system that mirror these requests. While instead, in terms of source, like the raw materials to make cookies and to make pasta and to make this kind of product are almost the same independently of the type of innovation that you include in the product. So you are able like to shape a unique and global supply chain able to supply all the plant, and then each plant, usually one in each region where Barilla operates in, is able to deliver to a dedicated distribution system. Another type of responsive supply chain is the one of Gucci. Gucci, you know, all Gucci, luxury good, leather goods, shoes, ready-to-wear, watch, jewelry, and other type of accessory. Of course, Gucci has production process and raw material that are the same since long time. But the product that Gucci produce are really subjected to customer market evolution. That's why the supply chain is Gucci is organized in this way. So less than Barilla, like production can be consolidated in Italy, also because there is like a Italian made in effect where Gucci likes to have all the plant localized in the center of Italy for tradition. Okay, but there is like a dedicated, like a specific and consolidated and historical supply base for the three plants that Gucci has in Italy. Okay, where everything is realized, but then again there is the need for a distribution responsiveness, because then Gucci is present in all the world, and different location have different needs in terms of product. And so Gucci has a dedicated distribution system in terms of articulation of regional warehouse, local warehouse, central warehouse, transit point, according to the region in which Gucci operates in. Why? Because again, there is the need to follow specific market demands, which requires a target distribution system and a target stock of product in the warehouse at the local level. Finally, we have the more complex model, which is the so-called Agile supply chain. The Agile supply chain strategy is a strategy that is suitable when the supply chain needs to face both variability outbound and inbound. So basically, it's no other than the combination of the risk hedging and the responsiveness strategy. I'm not like spending more time on that, but it's basically a supply chain agile as inbound the configuration typical of a risk hedging supply chain. So need to have a flexibility in production through the shaping of a reconfigurable production process, backup resources, safety stock, variable inventory management model, new competencies and updatable competencies, and flexibility in the supply network, backup strategy, open supply base, being able to switch from one supplier to the other or to integrate something that was bought before very easily, flexibility in the supply network, plus what we saw about the supply chain responsive, so being able to configure production processes that are able to rely on order, flexible to different requests, and unable to make a deliver through distribution system that tailor their request specific to local market needs in the desired lead time. An example of this type of supply chain strategy is what we call the octopus supply chain structure. Again, these names are just like given, like sometimes as we explore companies, we saw that their supply chain looks like that. We see that this is repeated more and more time, and we say, okay, there is a model within the agile supply chain structure which is called octopus. Basically, in the octopus supply chain structure, which is typically in aerospace or industrial machineries or semiconductors, integrated and textile apparel chains like Zara or H&M, we have, being global brands, we have a global sourcing and global delivery, where with global we mean huge investment to be able to have the best world-class supplier to cope with possible supply network instability, or at least when there is instability, to be able to rely to very big partners able to help to support this instability. Deliver, which is again not, it's big because like it's centralized and it's managed at the central level, but with huge investment in order to be able to bundle all the product, but then being able to react and deliver all the product to the market that we serve with responsiveness and flexibility, even if we rely on huge centralized systems. And then we have a focused production, because we want to reach a little bit of efficiency, but also also limit investment that are needed by the fact that we have variability in the production process, so we need to introduce backup resources. For example, Boeing is an example of an octopus supply chain structure. So the global source from a huge variety of high-tech supplier. Again, it's global, but suppliers here are million and million. Okay, so they are not dedicated to a single facility, also because there is one single country in Seattle, but they are million and million. So there are a lot of suppliers which are able to make a huge supply network that is able to back up at a global level. And then the deliver is, of course, a global market, clients everywhere, where we have self-transported product. Of course, like we are talking about helicopter, airplanes. So these products are self-transporting and can reach any customer worldwide in a very few times whenever is the request coming from different parts of the world. So that's a summary again of the different characteristics of the for supply chain. But I will recall this the next week, and we will analyze these 4 different types of supply chain next week. Starting from this, I will just recall the different characteristics at level of plan, demand management, inventory strategy, demand management and inventory management, production, purchasing, and distribution. And we will see 2 cases to understand if you are able to recognize which type of supply chain model is used according to the characteristic of the supply chain that are described in the text.